Imagine for a moment that you are living 40,000 years ago. You don't have a clock. You don't have a calendar. Your life is measured by the rising sun and the biting cold of the winter wind. To you, life is a series of immediate needs. You are hungry, so you track the deer. You are thirsty, so you find the stream. You are tired, so you find the safety of the cave. In this world, you have seen death. You've seen the carcass of a mammoth being picked clean by wolves. You've seen a member of a rival tribe fall in a skirmish and never get up. But up until now, death has always been something that happens to others. It is an external event, a mechanical failure of the body. You see a body that has stopped moving, and your brain processes it simply as not life. But tonight is different. You are sitting by the fire, and the silence of the cave is heavy. You look at the elder of your group, a man who taught you how to flint knap an arrowhead. He is frail now. His breath is shallow, a rattling sound that fills the space. You look at your own hands, strong, capable, but marked by the same lines you see on his face. Suddenly, a cold realization, sharper than any stone blade, pierces through your mind, a thought that no creature before you has ever truly grasped in its full, devastating weight. One day, the fire in me will also go out. This is my future. This realization, the awareness of one's own inevitable mortality, is perhaps the most profound turning point in the history of our species. It is the moment we stopped being just another animal and became human. But how did this happen? Did our ancestors always carry this burden, or was there a specific evolutionary glitch that forced us to face our own end? Today, we are exploring the existential dawn of the mind. We are asking, did ancient humans know they would die? To understand when we first realized we were mortal, we have to look at the rest of the natural world. If you look at a dog or a deer, they certainly experience fear. When a predator lunges, their heart rate spikes, adrenaline floods their system, and they fight or flee. This is a survival instinct. But is it a fear of death? Most biologists argue that animals live in what they call the eternal present. They react to immediate threats, but they don't possess the cognitive machinery to project themselves years into the future and imagine their own absence. A gazelle doesn't graze on the savanna thinking about its eventual expiration. It doesn't worry about its legacy. It just is. However, we see glimpses of something more in our closest relatives. We've all seen videos of elephants standing in silence around the bones of a matriarch, or chimpanzees carrying the lifeless bodies of their infants for weeks, grooming them as if they might wake up. In these moments, there is clearly a sense of loss. There is grief, but grief is not the same as the awareness of one's own death. You can mourn the loss of a friend without ever realizing that the same fate awaits you. To realize your own mortality, you need two things that most animals lack: a stable sense of self and the ability to travel through time in your mind. For our ancestors, this change happened as the brain's prefrontal cortex expanded. This part of the brain is like a biological flight simulator. It allows us to run what-if scenarios. What if I go over that hill? What if the rain doesn't stop? Eventually, the simulator ran a scenario that it couldn't solve. What if I am no longer here? This was the birth of chronesthesia, the ability to be aware of the past and the future, and with it came the ultimate realization. If time is linear, and every creature I see has an end, then I must have an end too. How do we prove that a person who lived 100,000 years ago knew they were going to die? We look at their final acts. For decades, scientists believed that only Homo sapiens, modern humans, were capable of understanding death. But then, we started digging. In the Shanidar cave in modern-day Iraq, we found something that shattered our view of our primitive cousins, the Neanderthals. One skeleton, known as Shanidar 4, was found in a burial pit, but it wasn't just dumped there. Soil analysis revealed high concentrations of pollen from several species of wildflowers: yarrow, cornflower, and mallow. For years, this was hailed as the flower burial proof that Neanderthals didn't just understand death. They honored it with beauty. While some modern researchers argue the pollen might have been carried in by rodents, the fact remains that the body was placed in a specific position, protected from scavengers. Even older evidence comes from the Rising Star Cave in South Africa, where Homo naledi, a species with a brain much smaller than ours, appears to have intentionally deposited their dead in a hard-to-reach underground chamber. Why does this matter? Because burial is an inefficient use of energy. If you are a hunter-gatherer struggling to survive, digging a hole and covering a body is wasted time, unless that body represents something more than just decaying meat. When you bury someone, you are making a statement. You are saying that the person's story doesn't end just because their heart stopped. You are acknowledging a transition. And if you acknowledge a transition for someone else, it's because you know that one day you will make that same transition yourself. The grave is the first physical evidence of the human ego grappling with its own expiration date. As we move forward in time to the Upper Paleolithic, about 30,000 years ago, the evidence of death awareness becomes undeniable and incredibly elaborate. Take the site of Sungir in Russia. Here, researchers found the graves of two young boys, buried head to head. They weren't just buried. They were adorned with thousands of hand-carved ivory beads, fox teeth, and spears made from straightened mammoth tusks. Each of those beads took hours to make. The total labor invested in these graves was staggering, thousands of hours. Why would ancient humans spend so much of their precious life decorating a corpse? This is where the architecture of fear comes in. Once we realized we would die, it created a massive psychological problem. Anthropologists call this cognitive dissonance. We have a brain that is programmed to survive at all costs, but that same brain is now telling us that survival is ultimately impossible. This creates a level of anxiety that could have paralyzed our ancestors. Imagine trying to hunt a dangerous bison while thinking, "What's the point? I'm going to die anyway." To survive this knowledge, we had to invent the immortality project. We began to create things that would outlast our bodies. We painted on cave walls in the deepest, most inaccessible chambers of Lascaux and Altamira. These weren't just decorations. These were attempts to leave a mark, to say, "I was here, I saw this, I existed." The elaborate burials at Sungir suggest that by 30,000 years ago, humans weren't just aware of death, they were obsessed with it. They were already creating the first religions and the first concepts of an afterlife to buffer the terror of the void. We started telling stories where death wasn't the end, but a journey. We didn't just accept the clock, we tried to break it. You might ask, why would evolution let us have this knowledge? If knowing you're going to die causes anxiety and existential dread, wouldn't it be better not to know? Wouldn't the eternal present of the animal kingdom be more efficient for survival? Actually, the awareness of death became a massive evolutionary superpower. First, it changed our relationship with time. If you know your time is limited, you become more efficient. You don't just wait for food to appear, you plan. You invent better tools. You store grain. You develop complex social structures. The knowledge of the end forced us to maximize the middle. Second, it created empathy. When you realize that you are mortal, you suddenly realize that everyone around you is also mortal. You look at your child and you understand their fragility. You look at your hunting partner and you realize their life is as finite as yours. This shared mortality is the glue that held ancient tribes together. It's why we see evidence of ancient humans caring for the sick and the elderly, people who couldn't contribute to the hunt. In the site of Shanidar, one Neanderthal skeleton showed signs of severe injuries that had healed years before he died. He was blind in one eye and had a withered arm. He couldn't have survived on his own. His tribe kept him alive. Why? Because they valued the self that existed beyond physical utility. Knowing we will die makes us care more deeply. It's the paradox of our species. The fear of death is what taught us how to love. Finally, death awareness gave birth to culture. All of human civilization, our temples, our books, our music, our scientific discoveries, is a response to our mortality. We build because we cannot stay. We write because we cannot speak forever. The very fact that you are watching this video, wondering about your ancestors, is a result of that first human 50,000 years ago realizing that their time was short. So, did ancient humans know they would die? Yes. They knew it in the silence of the cave. They knew it when they buried their children with ivory beads. They knew it when they painted mammoths on walls by the light of a flickering torch. But they didn't let that knowledge break them. Instead, they used it as a spark. They turned their fear into art, their anxiety into community, and their mortality into a reason to build a world that would outlast them. Every time you look at a photo of a loved one, or feel a sense of urgency to finish a project, or wonder what people will say about you when you're gone, you are connecting back to that first awakened ancestor. You are carrying the legacy of the clock. The awareness of death was the greatest burden our ancestors ever received, but it was also the greatest gift. It made us look at the stars and ask why. It made us hold each other tighter, and it made us, us. I'm the voice of Mindsec, and thank you for exploring the deep history of the human mind with us. If this journey into our past made you think, consider subscribing. The story of who we are is far from over.